Well, hi everybody. So for this week's creative exercise, it's going to be a little bit of an experiment, but we are going to be bringing together dialogue, text, image, and sound as well into one 30-second video experiment. So I'm going to go through the process. Now, this exercise is it does not have to be a profound piece of artwork and storytelling. You are just continuing to build on your compositing skill set as we bring more elements together in the class. So we are you can complete this totally in Premiere if you want. If you happen to already know a little bit of After Effects or you want to do something else and add some more, components with other applications, you certainly can. But you can do this particular assignment all inside of Premiere. So it's what we are going to focus on for this particular video. All right, so what the assignment is you need to choose some song lyrics, a poem, something that is spoken. It could even be a piece of a speech from someone that you really admire, one of your favorite speeches, whatever it is. And you are going to record your own voice speaking the words that need to be spoken. We are going to bring that audio in and use the text capabilities within Premiere to generate captions of that text. And then we are going to do some artistic application to the text itself, some stylization, just a little bit. And then you're going to be bringing image and sort of an ambient background noise as well into the mix, okay? So let me get started with the elements that I've just gathered from free stock resources online. Okay, so the first thing is at the time that I'm recording this, we are full in winter swing. It is January 18th. It's dreary, it's cold, and everybody's getting sick of it. So I chose this poem called Blizzard. It was written in 1978, and it's by Linda Paston. So here's the poem itself. So what I did is I just recorded myself reading this. As far as a recording device goes, you guys can use your phone. I recommend downloading a voice record app of some kind. The native memo recording isn't great, but there's Voice Record Pro, and there's a whole bunch of little just different apps that journalists use and things that are free. So just find something that you think will work for you to record your voice, and make sure you're doing it in as quiet of an area as possible. I know that can be a little tough sometimes. So here is my poem. Again, you can choose music, lyrics, or part of a speech, or whatever kind of artistic words you would like to put into your project. And keep in mind, this is about a 30-second, it should be around 30 seconds. So not any longer than 30 seconds, and it shouldn't really be shorter than 30 seconds. And that's a challenge to you. Those time restrictions are important, because when you're learning to produce content for other people and you're pretending that I am your client right now, they are going to have time restraints on what they need. So you got to figure out how to make it 30 seconds, okay? So I have this resource linked, freesound.org. It's completely free. You do have to sign up for an account just with your email, but there's no funny business, I promise. Anyways, yeah, so I downloaded this sound, Pine Forest Winter, because I needed an ambient winter sound to put under my voice to give a little bit more dimension to the imagery that my viewer is looking at. And then I just downloaded a few videos of snow. I got a couple of shots of, drone going over the forest trees blanketed in snow. That's a common stock video you see. So I have lots of options. I'm choosing to use Pexels. For Pexels, you don't even have to sign in or anything. They have lots of free content for you. So, you know, when you choose the dialogue that you're going to speak, after that, you can go ahead and gather your assets and see what you're feeling and what you think will go well with what your spoken word is. And the point of this assignment, and I do this really in a lot of my production classes, is you're bringing sound and image together. Not always sound, depending on what class it is, but in a lot of the production or moving image content classes, you're bringing sound and image together to communicate emotion and story to your viewers. So the more practice you get having something that you need to produce and bringing those elements together to make a compelling and engaging story, like that is the whole point of the content production classes. And that is what you will need to be able to do professionally once you're out in the job market. So anyway, so what I did is I'm going to start a new sequence here from scratch, but I did go ahead and give a start to how I've brought these together. Now, this is by no means a award-winning piece of video art or anything like that. Again, this is a practicing exercise for you guys to bring together. We've been playing around with color correction and manipulating video in different ways. And so now we're bringing, you know, dialogue, image, and text, all three of those elements together just to convey something. So I don't want you to think that if this is something that you're not that excited about when you turn it in, that you're not going to get a good grade or something like that. It takes a good number of these exercises of like pulling things together to get comfortable with it. And the more you do it, the easier it's going to come to you, and you're going to have a stronger artistic voice as everything moves forward and we keep producing more exercises and assignments. And these assignments will get larger scale as we move forward in the skill set, okay? So anyway, let me go ahead. I'm going to start a new sequence here. So I'm going to start a new sequence. I have all these different assets that are these, like my stock video files are all different sizes. So I'm going to make sure that I control my sequence size. So I'm going to go to a new sequence. I am going to choose HD 1080p at 24 frames a second because that is really what works best for online streaming. And I'm going to call this the text project, we'll say. You can call it whatever you like. All right. So here is my new sequence. So the very first thing I'm going to do is bring my audio track on to the timeline. So here's Blizzard spoken by me, and it is about, look, 29 seconds long. So keep that in mind that your piece needs to hit around 30 seconds. If it's 5 seconds short or over, that's fine, but you shouldn't be turning anything in that's like 10 seconds or even 20 seconds or like a minute and a half. Okay, those are not going to be acceptable. So all right, so anyways, here is my amount of time, and I think I am going to trim just a little. I don't mind. Well, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and trim the front of this because I know I'm not going to want that. Okay, and that's going to put me right at, I'm still at 27 seconds, so that's a good place to be for this particular assignment. Okay, so I have my audio here, and what I want to do, if I go to my text window, so if you go to Window and Text, and remember I'm in the editing workspace, you can work in whatever workspace works for you. I would suggest either editing or essentials, whichever one. Those are the two that I use for the most part, but anyway, okay, so I have my text here on the line. Make sure you've got your text tab up. If you don't see it, you can go to Window Text here to pop that up. And I'm going to click on the transcript tab, and it's already transcribed this particular poem for me. So it already knows what I'm saying. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what the text it's transcribed says and just make sure there aren't any like mistakes on how it interpreted it. So I'm looking at all the text here and everything looks great. It's pretty straightforward. I'm speaking really slow. I spoke very clearly, so Premiere's done a good job of interpreting that. So I don't really need to edit anything from here. I mean, you can see that there are pauses here, but I want there to be pauses if I'm doing, like, if I'm speaking a poem with video content. It's meant to be slow. It's meant to be reflective, and there should be lots of pauses for the viewer to think about things, right? And that's one other thing to keep thinking about as we go through post-production and different ways of bringing story together with several assets is pacing is really important. Pacing is what feeds the viewer the story and content you're giving them at the appropriate speed that they should be receiving it at. So for something like this, having lots of pauses is going to be just fine. So I'm just looking at my audio level, and it is okay. If I go through here, it seems to be hitting at around 18, and I just want to bring that up a little bit. So over here, you're going to see there's an essential sound panel here. We can talk about that later. Let me see if I can I can bring volume up in properties. So I'm not going to go through it in the essential sound panel, but if you click on properties, and if you don't see that window, you can go to window properties to bring that up. I'm going to just bring my amplitude up by 3. This is kind of a sound design thing, but your amplitude doesn't really, like, if you just bring it up by 1 decibel, it doesn't really do a whole lot. So I always bring the amplitude up or down in groups of 3. So like 3, 6, 9, 12 or whatever, what have you. So let's see where my levels are at. You want to be hitting around negative 12 or 12 for the average. I mean, it's going to always be a little high, and it might punch up above that, but that's a good place to be for dialogue. Okay, so I see that it's bouncing around the 12 now, and that's good. And I'm not really seeing it punch up into the orange or red anywhere on my dialogue track. So that's good. If you were to be punching up into the orange and red sporadically, it might mean that your speaking voice when you recorded has too much fluctuation in it. Like if your audio track is really, really quiet and then really, really loud, you might think about just re-recording it. There are ways to fix that, and we're going to talk a little bit about sound design in this class, but it's actually much easier. Like a good rule to think of in production is fix it in post is like the long way of doing things. If there's something that you can prevent from happening during the production to cause you more post-production work later that's actually going to take longer to fix it, the whole like fix it in post, is you don't want to do that. You want to avoid it. So if your amplitude's all over the place with your speaking voice, try re-recording it, and having your voice as a production tool for your storytelling is an important skill. Not that you necessarily want to become somebody that is like speaking for your production pieces all the time, but it's something that's good to get used to. Okay, so anyways, so my audio is at a good level now. I'm feeling good about that. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to go ahead and just add the subtitles right now, and then I'm going to start bringing my visual elements in, and then I'm going to make some decisions, and then I'm going to switch over to my timeline that I already have done. So anyways, let's see. I am going to go ahead and come over to my text tab right here, and if I click on captions, I want to create captions from the transcript. It's going to ask me a few questions. I'm going to say subtitle default. And in terms of all of these, I don't even think it really gives me very many options, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to show you how to change the subtitles themselves, after we add the track here. So let's go ahead and create captions. So you're going to see here that the captions have been created. They were created in the bottom center, which is where they often sit for particular production, right? So we're gonna leave those as is for the moment, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring in my video elements here. So I just need to make sure, yeah, so this particular clip has an audio track. Do you see if I were to drag it right here, it would take the associated audio track and it would actually cover up my voice? I'll just show you that. You don't want to do that. So what you can do when that happens is if you drag it and then just drag it up, it will not cover up the voice track. That's just, I don't know, that's just how it works when the audio is connected. But there isn't actually any sound. So it has an audio track embedded in with it, but there's no sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control click or right click, and I'm going to go to unlink, right click if you're on a PC. And if I unlink these two, you can see I can click on them independently now, and I'm just going to delete that. And then I also need to size this. So this video clip is bigger than my actual sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the scale down until it's fitting on there properly. Okay, perfect. And then I have this footage here of some snowy trees. So we'll bring the scale down on that as well. And yeah, so here's the footage. Now, one thing I did do on my other track, which I will just show you, I did do a crop, and what I highly recommend that you do is I would go through and do some manipulation to your video content so that you're changing the mood and tone to match whatever your dialogue is, whatever the mood is, okay? So mine's a slow poem. So I have some very serene, like winter scenes going on. You know, use Lumetri color, use the different effects and presets that we experimented with in the last few exercises and really change that footage to get that look and feel. Use those film presets, whatever it is. Experiment. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right. So anyways, I decide that I want to do like a split screen thing with my video. Now let's talk about changing this text. So if you click on this box, you can first of all manipulate these so that they stay on longer or shorter, just depending on what it is that you're doing. Obviously, they're going to make the size of the subtitle to match the length of the the speaking on the audio track. So anyways, how do I change this so that it matches a little bit better style of what I'm doing? So what you can do is select it. You can just click anywhere on it. You want to see that this wireframe box is selected. I'm going to grab my text tool. I'm going to highlight it. And then you can come over to the style of font. And I'm just going to pick a whatever. I'll just pick this Newman, and then I can change the font size. You can also change the zone which the text is in right here. Now, changing these subtitles in terms of the font and color and style and things, there is a more complicated way that you can manipulate text as story and image is being delivered to your viewer. And we will get into more in depth in that. And that is something I dive deeper into in like my motion graphics classes. But I just wanted to show you this as like a quick tool to get the text on the screen so that you're not manually doing all of that. And then some ways to make some manipulations to the text. Okay, so there are ways to do this where you have more control and things like that. But anyways, you can change the alignment and the zone of where the text is sitting. You can also just grab the selection tool, and if that wireframe is chosen, you can manually move these around. Now you can see that it's not allowing me to move the text out of the safety zone on the frame here, and that's a good thing. That's the safety zone is like this kind of invisible rectangle that lives within that you really never want your graphics or anything to go off of that if it's something that you absolutely need the viewer to see. And I think actually this font is just awful. This is not a readable font whatsoever. I like the style of it, but it is not working if I want people to actually read this. So I'm going to go in here and just pick something that's a little bit thicker. How about Rometto 1, which is actually a font I think I chose for my other timeline here. Okay, so you can see because the font was so big, it actually took one of the lines out. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger to make sure that all my text is in there. And then you can change your fill and stroke here. This has a shadow. I think this text has a shadow applied to it by default, which I think is a good thing most likely. And I really like into light purple for some reason today. So that's what I'm going to pick, something like that. So that's how you change the text. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I've got my background sound, my pine tree forest audio. So now I'm going to play it with that.
Kicking its paw at the window.
And you can hear that subtly in the background, and that's fine. I'm going to leave it as such. So, yes, I'm not going to go over a bunch of manipulation in terms of the video right now because we've already covered that. But let me come over to my timeline that's a little bit more finished. And I'm going to go over just cleaning this up at the end and then exporting the project. Okay, so one thing that I might want to do also is put the name of this poem and the author at the beginning of my video. So that would be a good thing for me to add here. Or you could do it at the end. So you want to give credit to whomever the source is for whatever you're speaking. And then in terms of finishing this up at the end, my dialogue ends here, so I'm just going to cut everybody down the line and cut off all this access at the end and get rid of that. So I can just highlight all of that and get rid of it. And now I know everything's ending on the same frame at the end. And I'm going to bring this in a little bit. So you can see throughout this project, I did go through, change the fonts, change the color a little bit. This footage I brought in and I did manipulate I just did a few basic things. I manipulated the contrast. I brought the contrast down so it laid a little bit flatter because this says I pull a comforter of snow and I didn't, high contrast creates depth. And so I'm trying to kind of emulate the vibe of the words that the viewer is seeing on the screen. So if this is really high contrast and has a lot of depth, it doesn't really feel like a comforter of snow, right? So just kind of making decisions like that for practice sake is a good artistic exercise in, manipulating assets in post-production to create a more effective and engaging story. All right, so let's say I'm happy with my project. I'm all done. I am just going to hit Command or Control M, or you can go to File, Export, or I think you can just click over to this Export tab. There's so many ways to do it. I've got text poem here. I'm going to do a high quality 1080 HD video, and that's what I think you should do too. You could do this as a vertical video, of course, for like a real, TikTok, whatever, that video format. But I'm going to go with old H.264 for this traditional landscape size for online streaming. And I am just going to go ahead and export that. So you are going to submit a URL for the submission. You are either going to upload it to YouTube if you don't want people to see it. Make sure that it is, not that it's unpublished, but that it's only viewable if somebody has a link. I can't remember what unlisted, I think is what it's called. If you make the video private so that only you can see it and you submit that URL to me, I will not be able to grade your project. Same goes for Google Drive. If you upload it to Google Drive and send me the link to the file, but I don't have permission to view it, the best thing to do, and don't share it with my email address necessarily, just set the permissions to anyone with link can view. Because if you're only sending me the link, then I'm the only one that's going to view it. So just throwing that out there. Using my email gets weird and you're gonna hear from me if you're gonna get an email from me if I can't view your video to grade. So you need to be thinking about those permissions. And, honestly, that's just professional practice anyways. So you guys, having to submit these different files and submit them in certain ways, that's just good practice for working with clients and working with teams in the future, because you're going to have to follow certain digital file practices depending on who you're working with. So anyway, okay, so this is the project. And like I said, like don't feel like, try to be open with it, and don't make it perfect. This is kind of like a sketch. We're just doing an audio video sketch of some kind of expressed, grouping of words. So don't get too hung up on like it being a masterful piece of storytelling. That's not the point, okay? And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions at all. I look forward to seeing your experiments when you turn them in. Okay, everybody, bye.